Hi, everybody. It's Laureen Quick, your host to the next edition of Unscripted and Unstoppable. Today, we are diving into one of the most universal experiences women face in the second half of their life, and that is that quiet, unnerving feeling of being stuck. Yes, we all have that experience to varying degrees and at different times in our lives. But this is particularly true for us women who are in our 50s, 60s, and beyond. We sometimes often get or feel stuck. And I'm sensing that maybe you have felt that sense of circling the same decision over and over, waiting for that great moment of clarity, which never seems to come, or just holding your breath for the right moment to choose your next step. It is a very uncomfortable place to be in, and it is also an incredibly important one. My guest today has a simple and I believe a liberating formula that cuts straight through that fog that you're experiencing. Sara Fernandes is a clarity and growth coach, and she's also the publisher of LM Magazine. Sara helps everyday midlife women like us move through transitions with confidence and self trust. Her approach is refreshingly simple and refreshingly human. She encourages us to decide, act, and then pivot if necessary. So instead of waiting for that certainty, Sara teaches us that momentum is born the moment we choose, and that clarity isn't something you think your way through, but rather it's something you discover by moving. So today we're going to talk about what does it mean to be stuck, really look at that beneath the surface and understand what that is, the cost of overthinking, the why even an important but imperfect decision can change our entire direction, and how to pivot with grace when life hands us something unexpected. This is a conversation about reclaiming your power, your agency, and your ability to change your life at any moment by what you choose. So settle in, my friends. You're going to walk away with bold clarity and great courage. Sara, welcome to Unscripted and Unstoppable. I am so glad you're here. And we are just going to jump right into that first question. When women describe themselves as feeling just stuck, what does that really mean psychologically, emotionally, and energetically? What are the quieter signs also that they may not recognize about being stuck?
Hi, Laureen. Thank you so much for having me. I absolutely am thrilled to be here with you.
Fantastic.
Okay, so when we say that we feel stuck, well, it usually isn't something external. We're
Mhm.
talking about an internal freeze that we feel, that we have. And it often looks like, overthinking, feeling tired, wanting change, but feeling guilty about wanting more. It feels like waiting for that clarity to come, like you were saying. We wait too much instead of making a decision to move. So we feel disconnected from our own desires. We don't even know what they are anymore. And then there's a little resentment going on. It can be towards, job, towards routines, even ourselves, because we let so much things get in between. We took care of everybody before ourselves, and now we're at that phase of life that we're finally ready to take ownership. We don't even know how to do that, and we're stuck. That's when that stuckness happens, if you will. So it's not a lack of ability. It's just a whole lifetime of not putting ourselves first, not choosing ourselves, if you will.
Mhm. And then when we finally step into that moment, we're not quite sure what to do.
Exactly. We feel lost.
Hmm.
It's something real, you know. Um, we feel that for me, for example, what happened, and this happened to me, that's why I feel that I need to talk about this.
Hmm.
I decided at 50 years old that I would come home um, and really work on my business, build this business. I did all the certifications, all the things. My husband on board, my children are grown up, you know, I could afford to do that. And 6 months in, I just wanted to get a job and get out of the house because I was trying to build this business. And suddenly, 1 month in, I realized that I wasn't making any money. I've worked all my life. I grew up in Australia. My first part time job, I was 15 years old. I went through university. I got married while I was studying. I have kids. I always had a job, a part time job, anything. And then suddenly I get to do my life the way I want to live my life, build my business that I want to build. And I'm here thinking, do I now ask my husband for money? How's that going to work?
Hmm.
Do I go for a walk in the middle of the day if I want to? But my husband is working, he's making the money. How dare I go and do that?
Hmm.
So it was very challenging. And I started to realize that I wasn't the only one going through this. And so I started to talk to other women about it. And everybody at one level or another felt stuck because the kids went off to college and they didn't know what to do with themselves. Either get a job, either, start a business or just enjoy life. No, because that would mean putting themselves first, choosing themselves. And they just didn't know how to do that.
It's kind of like I was imagining as you were sharing about your story, Sarah, that we're like, we walk into a room in our house that we've never seen before. We didn't even know it was there. And we walk in and we just stand in the middle of the room looking around, going, where am I?
Yeah.
What is this? It takes us some time, I think, to put everything in a context that makes sense. And then we can start to see options and choices and how we can act on them. But and there is that tinge of guilt around, well, okay, now this is all about me and it's never been all about me. So how are other people in my life going to react to that and feel about me making myself first? Yeah. And I love when you said, "Oh, and I thought I should just go back and get a job," because what we sometimes do in those moments is I'm just going to go back and do whatever it was I was doing before because that was
Yeah.
familiar, that was comfortable, and the real courage is to stay in that room for a little while longer until it clicks and it starts to make some sense for us. But I think the most important piece of what you said is you need to have awareness you're going through a transition. You need
Yes.
to remember this is all new to you, and so there are going to be moments where you are stuck, and that's okay.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned that idea of overthinking, which I think we have a tendency, women in particular, in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, we have a tendency to overthink things because we have the ability to anticipate and see all the possibilities of what could go wrong. At least that's my experience. So I overthink everything. What do you think is the real cost of that? And do you have strategies to get us out of that overthinking?
Well, overthinking is very expensive. It costs us time, it costs us joy, opportunities, energy, but it also costs us our identity, because every time we overthink, we accidentally reinforce the belief that I don't trust myself. Because if I did, I would just make that decision.
Yeah.
And, we are so capable. but we're also tired. And when we are tired, hesitation feels safer than actually making a decision,
Hmm.
because then we have to hold ourselves accountable for that decision that we made, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
then, yes, and we don't want to. We feel like, well, at least here I'm in limbo and nothing is going to happen because I'm not permitting myself to make the decision and move forward. So I'll just stay here for a little while longer. And meanwhile, our life is passing us by, everything is moving, and we are feeling we're staying there in that place.
Yes. And I think as we get older, we also, this becomes a conflict for us because we have this urgency. How much time do we have left?
Yeah.
Do you need to do something? So it makes, even though we may be choosing to wait, to hold back, we still are feeling like, oh, but time is slipping away. And
Yeah.
I should be acting. And then there's, we get guilt and all kinds of stuff that happens in our heads.
Mm.
And we end up overthinking even more, right?
Yes, yes. But I'm very big. I talk about making decisions all the time.
Mhm.
And I think that for me and my experience and what I teach is we're all looking for clarity. And we don't just sit in that space and wait for clarity to happen. We decide, because when you take action, when we decide, we're going to feel clear. Everything is going to start to open up. And yes, it might be clear that you shouldn't go that way, but guess what? As long as you're moving, you can pivot, you can turn. But if you're just staying there, nothing is going to happen.
So what you're telling me is really making a decision is what will bring you that clarity.
It is.
And you always have the option to change or shift depending on the results you're getting.
Yes.
Not deciding doesn't, it's not going to bring you any clarity. You're just going to continue to lack that clarity.
Yes. And not deciding is overthinking, because you are in that space that if you don't decide, why don't you decide? It's because you don't trust yourself to make the right decision. So you overthink. It's a vicious cycle. It's it's really, I believe, and I believe that action is always going to be our best friend. And it doesn't need to be huge. It doesn't have to be like life altering um, change. It's just one small thing. Just making that decision. Sometimes women say, oh, if I knew this was all it would take, I would have done that a long time ago. Because they decide, because unless you decide, the universe is not going to show you anything. You're not going to see your path, right? We barely see the next step.
Mhm.
So when we decide, so when we don't decide, there's no need for us to know where to go because we haven't even decided where we want to go. And that keeps us there.
Mhm. I love this. It's kind of it is radical in the sense that most traditional thinking would say get clarity first and then make your decision. And your recommendation, which I'm going to I'm going to start trying to do in my life, is just make a decision and then move forward and see what happens. And from there, you can make changes and adjustments, but the clarity comes when you make that decision,
It
not
does.
before it.
And don't take it from me, because Abraham Hicks said, make a decision and then make it right.
Well,
There
very
are no
good.
wrong decisions. Because you make a decision and then you make that decision the right one. You make the decision to move, for example, in your business, you want to be a speaker and you decide that you're going to go for it.
Yep.
And you get the opportunity and you hate it. Guess what? You know that's not where you want to go. So you pivot and you go and you write a book. But you're doing what you want to do anyway. But if you never made the decision to go after that thing, you wouldn't know. And you would get to the end of your life and you'd think, if only I'd been a speaker, if I only made the decision to be the speaker, I could have been this. And if you try it, guess what? You realize it's not even for you. And that's okay.
So, in some ways, what you're suggesting then is that the act of deciding really will actually end up reshaping your identity and your whole life as
Absolutely.
women in our 50s and 60s are stepping into new roles and new chapters of our existence, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
So, can you speak a little more about that? How does that process work?
Well, when we are, when we decide, let's just go with that. It
Okay.
does reshape your identity because when you choose something different, we become different. We change. We see ourselves differently, and the other people start seeing us differently. And for me, for example, that happened one day in my own life. Everything was going wrong, and it had been wrong for some time. And I decided one day, I don't know why, that I would be very grateful for where I was at. I had a job, I had food on the table. Was it my dream job? Hell no. Was it everything? It wasn't my ideal life. But guess what? My kids were healthy. They were in school. Everything was fine. My husband had a job. We were healthy. And so I decided that I wasn't going to keep living my life because I had 3 years that were just the same year over and over and over.
Hmm.
And so I thought, no, this is no life. So let's just make a decision to be grateful. And that's how it all opened up for me. And from that day on, I saw myself differently. I started to get ideas on how I could actually change my life. I wasn't doing anything yet. Nothing externally changed for me. But inside, because I decided I did not want to stay in that place anymore, everything changed. I started to listen to podcasts. And the podcasts that started coming up for me were all about self growth, about self development. Um, I started to listen to financial freedom podcasts, you know, and I changed. People would say to me, what happened? Like in a month, you're not the same person. I was, but I wasn't.
Yeah. And I think in some ways you are more who you always were, right? I think part of this process we go through is discovering who we were, and allowing ourselves to become more fully that, if that makes
Absolutely.
sense, right? So, and I love this because I think it is a very interesting process of self-identification when we shift one thing in our lives that that shifts slightly who we think we are, and then others react and affirm that to us, and that encourages even more. And that doesn't even have to be a positive reaction. You could get a negative reaction, but your response to that is, well, I don't care what you think. I'm this, right? Whatever that might be. And so it just continues to reaffirm, reaffirm, reaffirm until eventually you've embraced that whole new identity that a year ago you would have said, that's not me. But wow, look at it. It is me. Oh my goodness. How did this happen? Right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And isn't this like the best time? I felt so freeing that
Mhm.
I could actually be myself. And, another thing that people kept telling me that I needed to leave friends behind, sometimes family, because, you're moving, these people aren't serving you anymore. But you know what I discovered in
Mm.
my own life is that once I made the decision to be different, to follow that path, to go after what I wanted, I didn't leave anybody behind. They felt the need to get away from me because I no longer was tolerating whatever I was not giving them whatever they were there for that I was giving them before. I didn't leave anyone behind. You want to come with me? I'll teach you. I'll bring you with me.
Yeah.
Let's do this. But they don't want to. And they don't like you anymore because you are no longer tolerating their behaviors.
It's
And that is huge.
it is huge, and it is really fascinating to me because what happens is the more you stand in who you are and your truth, the more you're clear about your boundaries.
Yes, absolutely.
That's what causes people to either shift into your life or shift out of your life because you define this is what's acceptable. This is what I'm looking for. This is what I want. And people self-select in or they self-select out depending on that clarity that you walk with, right?
Absolutely, yes.
This is so fascinating to me. Oh, I just very excited about this conversation. So, why is the first step? What do you think about the first step? Why is it important enough to initiate real transformation even when the bigger plan isn't clear yet?
Like, you know, the first step can be really, really tiny. We've
Hmm.
been talking about it. It can be the decision you make. You can make the decision that starting today, you are going to meditate for 5 minutes. Or you can make the decision that from today on, you're going to go on a walk. And it doesn't have to be life shattering or whatever. But it, it absolutely changes you. You start to create, like we brush our teeth every day. We don't even question ourselves anymore. We just do it. It's our routine. And when you start with these small things, you start creating that little routine and you start changing, right? And when we feel that we're stuck, it isn't a failure per se. It's just we've been sitting on it for too long and we haven't felt not the need, but we haven't felt that nudge to move because a lot of things were going on. And when we take that tiny action, our confidence shifts
Hmm.
because you think, oh, do I actually, I have 10 minutes to go on that walk? Because what happens is we want big things, we want the grand gesture, but you're never going to run a marathon unless you start training, going for a little run, taking the first steps,
Hmm.
you know. It's about that, creating that. And then you start with like, okay, I'm going to walk for 10 minutes. And next week you up it to 15 minutes.
Hmm.
And then, you start create and suddenly you're running a marathon and you think, oh, was this my big goal? Was this what no, I want to run 5 in a year because guess what? you know, I got that momentum. I'm confident, you know,
Hmm.
I'm not because being stuck it's something that we put ourselves in there. It's something we do to ourselves because of sometimes external and sometimes it's just what we think the outside world is telling us, or we think I'm not going to do that because what are going to people going to think about me. They're not thinking about you, I'm sorry to say, but they're not. They're too busy looking at themselves. They're too busy with their own lives, which is awesome, but we tell ourselves these things, and that unfortunately keeps us in the same place. That's one of the big reasons people don't move.
As you're sharing that about the walking thing, I will tell you, when I turned 60, I had a big aha moment that led me to book a trip to Peru to see Machu Picchu. This is a
Nice.
short story. And out of that, I realized at that point, right, I was probably 80 pounds heavier than I am now, and I was very out of shape. And realizing that we were going to have to walk around this beautiful site,
Yes.
I decided I needed to get a little bit more in shape, and I started walking. And I literally would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, put music on, and I would walk in my house 10 minutes a day. And then I upped it to 15. And then I upped it to 20. And the next thing you know, I was on this trip and I did the experience. It was incredible. And when I got home, I started hiking and more travel. And it just has catapulted into where today I don't feel good unless I've had a walk. So I have to go out and walk. And oh, by the way, I am now 80 pounds lighter than I was then. and a lot more happier. So it is that it builds momentum. One little teeny thing, even the story you shared about gratitude, I've decided I'm going to be grateful for everything I have in my life. One little teeny thing expands, and then that expands and expands and
Yeah.
expands until you evolve. And so, yeah, stop waiting. If you're listening, if you're watching, my advice, as I speak with Sara, is stop waiting. Just get out there and start doing, and
Yeah.
don't care. Just do things and see what you like and what you don't like, and then shift and modify based on however that goes. So that's amazing. But here's another question for you then. What if it's not clear to you what is that first step? How do you know what step you should take to begin?
Well, you just need to take one, make the decision. For example, you want to lose weight, or you want to feel good in your body. You have 10 different diet plans you can follow.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know which one is the best? Probably not. You've never tried any of them. So you just make the decision to start with one. And you will soon realize if that is for you or not.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, well, you're already following a dietary plan. You can pivot and go to a more plant-based one, or you can go to a more high protein one. It's what feels good to you, what feels good to your body. And now you are confident that, well, I started this, I can keep going, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and you keep going. And you start to realize, oh, guess what? I think I would love to be a vegan because actually, that's how I feel better when I eat a lot of vegetables. And so you're going to try that. And if it's not for you, you can always become just a vegetarian. Or, you know, it's so simple to make the decision, because then it's not written in stone. We don't know. I've started my magazine because I wanted to create resources for coaches. And that was 1 year and a half ago. And I wanted it to be a paid resource. Fast forward 18 months. It's a magazine, a digital magazine for midlife women who are going through change and who need a little bit of support.
Well,
And it's a free resource. And I didn't, when I started it, that's not, I could never imagine that it would be as big as it is today, and that I would be reaching midlife women. That was not what I was planning to do, but it took on a life of its own.
mm-hmm.
And then I just made one decision after the next. And I decided I'm going to try. And then somebody said, Sara, I'd love to put an ad on your magazine. And I was like, no, it's my baby. Who dare? How you dare you come and offer me money to be on my magazine? No, no, no. And then I thought, why not? It's okay, let's do that. And guess what? Now I sell the cover of my magazine, you know, and things, and I try it. And if it's not okay, and if I don't like, I can always say no, and I can always go back and create another model. So if we think about it, it's the decision. We we make 10-year plans. Sometimes we get, to them in like 2 years or 5 years. Or sometimes we change the plan completely. And that's okay too. That's okay.
So, but here's one question for you around the difference between a healthy pivot
Hmm.
and being someone who quits. So, or is always changing their mind, right? So,
Hmm. Hmm.
how can you help us make that distinction? Am I really pivoting in response to the situation, or am I just quitting and changing direction because I can't ever stick to one decision?
That also is a decision. You can decide that for a period of time you are going to try that out no matter what, and give yourself the container to really embody that thing or that person that you want to be or to become. And also, I would trust your intuition or our intuition, because we sometimes get out of tune with it. But in midlife, I felt my intuition coming back because I didn't grow up believing that I should trust my intuition. You just do things like this because everybody does. That's it. You don't have to think about it. Everybody has a job. You don't like it, well, you're not supposed to like your job. You just need it to get money so you can pay your rent. That's all. Don't even think about it. And so you party on the weekend so that on Monday you are going back to the job that you don't like, right? So intuition was not part of the process ever.
Yep.
And I've also realized that intuition is always going to steer us in a good way. When we feel that our body contracts and we feel, oh, we have that hit, that idea, and we think, oh, this is my intuition. But then it starts giving you reasons why you should or why you shouldn't. That's not intuition. That's just fear and your paradigms and all the things coming up for you. When you have that intuition and you just listen to it, it's going to say, yes, let's do this. And you decide to follow it, and things are going to open up for you. When you feel that the questions coming up, no, I don't want to do this. I'm not going to do that. And it means you're in the right track. If you make the decision and your mind is, yes, that's the good decision because it wasn't the right one because you are um, you are not cut out for it. Who do you think you are? Of course you're not going to do it. You're right, don't do it. That's not your intuition. That's your paradigms. That's all your thoughts coming up
That's
and
good.
telling you,
Yeah.
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 So I would follow that, and I pivot a lot. I'm multi-passionate. That's what I say, because I love a lot of things. And for a long time, I also didn't know. But the funny thing is that when I decided on one thing, if that's not for me, the door is not going to open and a window is opening. And then I look through that window and then I follow that. And then, and sometimes we go around a long way to end up somewhere that, maybe at an easy shortcut. But I truly believe we needed to learn things along the way. We
Mm.
weren't ready to follow it, so to be so straightforward.
I always believe timing is divinely determined,
There you go.
right? And so we have to trust that. But also, as you're describing this, we have to learn to trust ourselves. Um,
Because when we are overthinking and stuck, guess what? We're not trusting ourselves.
exactly. And so, how do we cultivate a sense of trust in ourselves? How do you cultivate that as a woman who makes many decisions?
Um, for me, I ask myself, is this aligned with where I want to go? This,
Uh,
first of all, is it aligned with my values? Those are important to me. And if they're not, that's just okay, we're not going there. I'm not even interested in pursuing that or looking into it. Um, if I feel that it is aligned with my personal values and it benefits my ecosystem, my people, the people that I serve, the people I show up for, then it's a hell yes. And I I trust myself because I always take the first step with being of service first and knowing that this is what's important to me. And so I believe that I make the right decision right now with the information I have to better serve the people I'm here to serve. And that's important to me.
mhm. So what I heard from you was you can learn to trust yourself by doing an assessment of is this decision, is this choice, this action aligned with my values as a woman? And also, what is my intention in making this decision and sticking to the decision and changing the decision,
And
whatever,
changing,
right? Is it consistent with my intention to be of service, to support the community and the
absolutely.
people in my life? Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love that. That's fabulous. That's wonderful. So, last question for our listeners and our viewers today. For any woman who is listening or watching this session, this episode, and they are standing at a threshold right now in their lives, what is one decision that you would invite her to make today, and why? Why that one?
Okay, this is fairly easy. I want that woman to decide that she matters in her own life.
Mm.
You know, we have desires for a reason. We have dreams for a reason. And just decide that those are non negotiable for you anymore, that you are deciding to show up for yourself. And it does, again, it doesn't have to look like a whole day at a spa. It doesn't have to look like 2 hours of a morning routine. That's not what I'm talking about. And if that's what it takes for you and you absolutely do that. But what I'm talking about is decide that you are taking the 10-minute walk. Decide that you are going to learn something new today, something that interests you. There's a reason you have all these dreams and these desires. Take a step. You want to write a book? Well, you're not going to start by writing the whole book. You're going to think about what would you like to write about. Dedicate 5, 10 minutes for that to that every day, because that is a way of you showing up for yourself. And again, I don't want to sound boring, but make the decision to take those steps. It,
You're not boring there. I think this is radically fundamental to our lives.
yeah,
Decide and act.
yes. Our energy shifts the moment we decide
Hmm.
that we are taking, because again, the universe likes when we act. I mean, we're energy. Everything around us is energy. And so when we move, when we act, when we put our ideas out there, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Our priorities shift, and
Hmm.
that's okay. And the image that we have of ourselves shifts as well. And that is beautiful, you know? And so that one decision to show up for yourself because you matter, that's going to transform your life. That can take you places you didn't even imagine
Yep.
just by deciding.
Sarah, thank you so much for the depth, the wisdom, and the heart that you have brought to this conversation today.
Thank
For,
you.
for those listening or watching, thank you also for joining us for this very powerful conversation. I hope that something in today's episode has stirred you, has challenged you, or given you permission to take that next small but meaningful step. What I love most about Sarah's work is that it's simple. And the truth of her message really is you don't have to have it all figured out. It doesn't have to be perfectly aligned with your life and this big, giant, huge thing. You just have to choose. And from that choice, act. And then
Yes.
clarity and momentum and possibility begin to unfold in your life. So, if you are standing at a moment of transition, if you are feeling as you listen or watch this that there's a tug pulling you to something new, I hope that today's insights remind you that you are not stuck, that you just simply are at the edge of your next decision. You can connect with Sarah if her message resonated with you and explore her work more through the links in the show notes. I do encourage you to reach out. She is a beautiful guide for this season of life. I also will share the link in the show notes to her magazine, and you can subscribe as well to that incredible piece of work that comes out on a monthly basis. If this episode resonated with you, I would also encourage you to share it with another woman who is in her next chapter, and it may make sense for her to hear this message today. And if you haven't yet, make sure you're subscribed to Unscripted and Unstoppable as well, so you never miss an episode. And as always, if you are ready to explore your own next step and you are wanting to talk more with me, I would love, just love to have a Connect and Elevate call with you. The link is inside the show notes as well. With that, I just want to say thank you all for being here today, for being brave. And until next time, stay curious, stay open, and my friends, stay unstoppable.